So Terence Crawford beats the brakes off Errol Spence, destroys him, beats the living daylights out of him, and stops him in 9 rounds. I want to acknowledge 38% of my subscribers who correctly predicted this outcome. They said that Terence Crawford would stop Errol Spence late. And I also want to acknowledge Richard Dwyer, because all the videos I saw from him in the build up to this fight were absolutely bang on the money. He was making out as though this was going to be a pretty one-sided fight in Terence Crawford's favor. And that's exactly what we saw here. Now, on the ring walk, to me, Errol Spence looked very nervous. I know he's got those sleepy eyes, right? Makes it look like he's high. But no, his eyeballs were shifting around and his body language just looked more nervous than I've ever seen it before. And same thing when he got in the ring. He was kind of jittery and moving around and constantly looking in different directions. Those are the signs of a nervous fighter. Yet when Terence Crawford came to the ring, absolutely relaxed, calm, no sign of nerves at all. Because I was wondering before the fight who would handle the pressure better. Terence Crawford was far more relaxed. He had the confidence of a man who truly believed that he was going to win right down to the core of his soul. Whereas Errol Spence, I think, had some doubts somewhere deep inside him. First round starts, and surprisingly, after looking so nervous on the ring walk, Errol Spence actually kept it together. I thought his jab was good in the first round, and I gave him that first round. Terence Crawford was just moving around, very relaxed, just looking to download data, as they like to say, and figure out the angles and the timing and so on. Second round, again, Spence was looking fairly good, but then towards the end of the round, Terence Crawford landed a reverse 1-2. He threw a left first out of the southpaw stance, followed by a right. And it's that same right, that extremely powerful, clearly extremely powerful right jab. Some people will call it a jab come hook, but to me, it just looks like a really solid right jab. The same one that did Kell Brook in a couple years back. That dropped Errol Spence for the first time in his career. And when he got up, his legs were all over the place. There was some people speculating, maybe it was a flash knockdown and a balance thing. To me, he looked hurt. That didn't look like just a flash knockdown. That looked like he was actually hurt, judging by the way his legs were when he got up. And from that point in the fight, Terence Crawford had a guy in front of him who was flustered, who was embarrassed, and that played into Terence Crawford's hands. We all knew going in that Spence is a little mechanical compared to Terence Crawford. He's not as fluid, he's not as flexible. If you think about it like a ruler, in UK, the rulers have got inches and they've got centimeters on them. A mechanical fighter like Spence, his limbs, his arms and legs and his adjustments are in inches. Whereas a more fluid fighter, his adjustments are in millimeters. So his adjustments can be more precise. When he's adjusting his feet, when he's adjusting the range, when he's adjusting the trajectory of the punches. You see what I'm saying? He's got lots of steps in between, whereas Spence adjustments adjust in inches. This isn't to be taken literally. I'm trying to explain the difference between a mechanical fighter and a fluid fighter and why it matters. Obviously, there are plenty of fluid fighters who don't turn out to be very good, but when you've got someone that has the brain and the mentality of a Terence Crawford and the toughness and all that, the power, and you have the fluidity, his adjustments can be more precise because he's dealing in millimeters of adjustment if he wants to go down that fine, rather than being confined to just inches of adjustment with a more mechanical fighter like Spence. And that's what made the difference. Crawford adjusted better, being more fluid, more supple, and he was then able to even fight in the pocket. We wondered about that. Would Terence Crawford be able to fight Errol Spence in the pocket? Well, after a few rounds, he absolutely could, because he'd figured out all the angles. Then he was able to stand right in front of Spence, come upstairs with hooks, counter him with those sharp shots, and Spence was all over the place. I mean, he was like Bambi on ice in there. He looked like some homeless nitty having a fight, swinging wild haymakers outside the chicken shop at 3 a.m. And every time Terence Crawford landed clean, even with a solid jab, Errol Spence's legs were gone. There was 3 knockdowns in the fight. But aside from those 3 knockdowns, every time Terence Crawford caught him with something clean, Spence's legs would wobble. If you're watching, his legs were just not there at all. Now, some people are going to try and blame it on the car crash. In fact, Dwyer, shout out to him again, he has been questioning Spence's punch resistance since that car crash because of what he saw in the UGAS fight where he did get hurt. And that's definitely something, we've all been contemplating. But, I don't want to take anything away from Terence Crawford's performance. At the end of the day, he went in there with a guy who did beat the brakes off UGAS, who did beat the brakes off Danny Garcia, and so on. But Spence was down again in round 7 twice. The first knockdown was a beautiful uppercut. Terence Crawford had his back to the ropes. Errol Spence came charging in, and he did actually land his own shot simultaneously, but Crawford's was the better shot. It was a right uppercut, and Errol Spence went down. It was actually a bit reminiscent. I know this is going to sound random. It was actually actually a bit reminiscent of one of the knockdowns in the first Dillian Whyte-Alexander Povetkin fight, when Dillian Whyte's back was to the ropes and Povetkin came charging at him, and I think Whyte caught him with a left hook that dropped him. In this instance, it was a Terence Crawford right uppercut that dropped Errol Spence in the 7th. Spence got up and showed a ton of heart. You know, I should mention that here. Spence showed the heart of a lion, the heart of a warrior. Even at the end, when he was totally defeated, he still wanted to continue. He complained when the referee stopped it. So Spence's heart cannot be questioned in the ring. But the second knockdown in the 7th round was a right hook. And again, very powerful, precise shots from Terence Crawford. And at that stage, round 7 after the 2 knockdowns, I was screaming that they need to stop the fight. Derek James needs to stop the fight. Somebody needs to pull Errol Spence out, particularly a guy who's been through something like that car crash. You don't know how his brain might be and all that kind of thing. He's had a detached retina and all this surgery on his eye. Pull him out of the fight. That went on way too long for me. I know sometimes these fighters have conversations with their team behind the scenes and tell them, you know, don't ever pull me out of a fight and all this kind of thing. As a trainer, you have to ignore all that. Do you want to be responsible or partly responsible for your fighter getting seriously hurt? Do you want to have those conversations with their family members and so on? I wouldn't want to be in that position. Do you know what I mean? And it's not just that you're looking out for your own interests in terms of avoiding awkward conversations with angry family members. No, you should be looking out for the fighter's health. And I didn't like that there from Derek James or from the ref. I thought the ref could have stopped that fight early. I get it's a big fight and everybody's paid a lot of money to watch it and what have you. Anyway, it continued for a couple more rounds. At this point, Errol Spence was actually starting to show some signs of going into survival mode. I don't want to take nothing away from his heart and bravery he showed, but at times he was trying to move around and he looked like he was trying to just get through some of the sessions, because whenever he was hit, his legs would go. And Terence Crawford sensed it and he just stepped up the pace. He realized Spence was starting to think about survival more than attack, put some shots together in the 9th, and finally the referee stepped in and did what he should have done a couple rounds earlier, at least for my money. Now we know why PBC and Errol Spence avoided this fight for so long. And they did avoid it for a long time. I know there was always weirdos that would pop up in the comment section and have a go at me whenever I would say that Errol Spence was avoiding Terence Crawford. But come on, of course he was avoiding him. He priced himself out last year. They tried to explore a million different options and go every other direction except for towards Terence Crawford. And when none of the other options were viable, they eventually resigned themselves to the Crawford fight. They tried to age him out. That's what Errol Spence's people did, PBC. They tried to wait as long as they could and delay that Terence Crawford fight, but they could have probably delayed it 5 years more, because obviously Spence is only a couple years younger than Terence Crawford. They could have delayed it 5 years more. Crawford still probably beat the brakes off him when he's 40 and Spence is 38 or 37. And there was somebody in my Element group who said this, and I have to echo their sentiments. Errol Spence might never be the same again after this fight because of the beating he took physically and the beating he's going to take mentally. Being humiliated like that, because that was humiliating. This was the fight to decide who the best welterweight in the world is. Some people were saying pound for pound, best welterweight of the generation and so on. And it wasn't competitive. Everyone was there. Everyone was watching. Mayweather was ringside. Mike Tyson was there. Celebrities, the who's who. And Spence got beaten like a heavy bag in front of all those people. How's he going to deal with that mentally coming back from this? It's going to be very, very tough. And as I say, not to mention the physical damage that he's taken there. Now, there is a rematch clause in the contract. From what I've heard, maybe you guys can confirm or deny this. From what I've been told by somebody in my Element group, the winner of the first fight will decide which weight the rematch happens at. Would Bud Crawford really want to rematch Errol Spence at 154? There's no need for him to. Being the smaller man, wouldn't he just do it at 147 again? Or would they try and pressure him to do it at 154 for the sake of selling the rematch? Personally, I think that anyone on Errol Spence's team who even thinks about a rematch, never mind actually requests one, needs to take a long walk off a short pier with sharks and crocodiles and piranha fish in the water. Seriously, if you've got the best interest of your fighter at heart, you're not going to want him to go anywhere near Terence Crawford again after that. After a beating like that, his next fight needs to be a step down by several levels. Unless, of course, he's just trying to cash him out. And that's what boxing is full of. It's full of people that don't care about the welfare of the fighter. They're just looking to line their pockets. But anyone who actually cares about this man, you're going to keep him well away from Terence Crawford. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this fight. Did it turn out to be what you expected? Did you think it would be one-sided like this? Let me know in the comment section below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast, where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.